Fasting for health and longevity reasons is a really hot topic these days, but what is actually the role of fasting and how long do you need to be doing it for and what do you need to be doing while you're fasting in order to make sure that you actually come out on the other end healthier? These types of questions and more are exactly what we are asking on today's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast to our expert guest, Dr. Joseph Antoun. We're going to cue the intro song and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, here in Schaumburg, Illinois, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. But we know that exercise is not the only piece of the puzzle, and that is why we are bringing you a rock star guest today, none other than Dr. Joseph Antoun, to discuss this idea of fasting, longevity, and how one relates to the other, but how you need to make sure you're doing your fasting correctly in order to actually get those longevity boosting benefits. Now, Dr. Antoun's passion is to enhance human healthy longevity. He is the CEO and chairman of the board of L-Nutra, a unique nutrition technology company leading the food as medicine movement and developing breakthrough nutri technologies that profoundly impact how we age and prevent or better manage health conditions. Before taking on these roles, Dr. Antoun was the CEO of Health Systems Reform, a boutique consultancy aimed at elevating public health through reforming health systems, strengthening healthcare management, and improving healthcare delivery. The co-director and Center for Health Policy at the University of Chicago, an adjunct professor of health policy at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging, and a fellow at the Department of Social Policy at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Dr. Antoun founded and served as a co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Health Systems and Reform. He served as the chairman of the board at Global Health Span Policy Institute, GHPI, as a member of Forbes Business Development, and as a head of business development for emerging markets at Eli Lilly and Company.
Well, Dr. Antoun, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Charlie, and I hope that today we're going to change somebody's life.
Yes, I hope so as well. And I think our topic today will absolutely allow us a great opportunity to do that. And I'm just fascinated with this topic that we're going to be discussing because I know that one of your areas of expertise is fasting. It's something that has had a profound impact on my own health. And I've heard so many things from so many other people as well. But I want to know, just in general, how do you define fasting?
Yeah, well, there are three definitions for fasting. The most common one that everyone knows is you eat no food, and some people say don't drink as well, but you should definitely drink. It's very important and to make it at least safe, the journey safe. But most people will tell you fasting means no food. There's a second definition in which is a physiological fasting. If you think about it, you and I now are talking, we're not eating. So are we fasting? Well, maybe we ate just an hour or two ago, so we are, not physiologically fine. We're not eating now, but we're physiologically not fasting. What does it mean to have a physiological state of fasting? It means that you spend long enough hours with no food that your body is now saying, okay, I'm not getting an external source of calories. Let me go and break down fat into ketones and use the ketones as a source of calories. So physiological fasting is when you get into ketosis because you're using your own sources of calories. Now, we as a company, we actually discovered a third way to fast. So we're called L-Nutra, where L is for longevity through nutrition.
Cool.
And we've actually went into studying how the cell, gets into fasting or not. So we went all the way to the cellular level, and we saw that there are three receptors on the cell that senses the food. They call them nutrient sensing pathway. So actually now, a molecular fast, the third definition of fasting, is a molecular fasting, which means that even if you eat, if your food is not going through the main pathways of the cells recognizing the food, so the cell is getting food without even recognizing it, and therefore the cell could be fasting while you're eating food, actually.
Interesting.
And this is what we have come up with as a new technology, new nutrition technology to the word. It's called the fasting mimicking diet or the fasting mimicking nutrition.
Oh,
Many
okay.
people many people know Prolon, the 5 days fasting nutrition, or the fast bar,
Mhm.
the morning bar or Prolon reset. These are products, these are food products
Uh-huh.
that you eat, but then by the time the nutrients get to the cell, they don't trigger enough the nutrient sensing pathway. So the cell is getting nutrients without actually getting satisfied and stays in a fasting mode.
Wow, that is super cool. That is super cool. So then in that scenario, people are still able to feel some level of satiation, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
because they're still eating, but your body doesn't recognize it as like, okay, you're having these big meals or you're having these snacks.
Yeah, and it makes fasting safe. And now it allows you to go long. We're going to talk about why you want to go long on a fast, but you want to do it with food now to not jeopardize your safety. And the benefits are so profound that actually the National Institute of Health
Mhm.
which is one of the most credible, if not the most credible funder of research. It's their money that went to University of Southern California and other universities to develop the fasting mimicking nutrition. So
Wow.
when NIH saw the benefits of water fasting,
Yeah.
especially the prolonged one, and
Hmm.
we're going to talk what happened if you go longer. But
Sure.
the longer you go, the more risky it is because you're having no nutrients, and the
Hmm.
more difficult it is.
Hmm.
But the more benefits you get on the other side. So
Okay.
many universities got together and the National Institute of Health funded them to discover the fasting mimicking diet or the fasting mimicking nutrition.
Uh-huh.
So now you can eat to take down or mitigate a lot of the side effects, the hunger, the feeling tired
Yeah.
and not being nourished, and keep the benefits at the cellular level of fasting.
Very interesting. So I know, one thing that is really popular right now, or at least, within the people that I follow, is the idea of kind of like intermittent fasting or kind of time
Yes.
restricted eating, whether it's like a 16/8 or, it's
Yes.
something like that, not eating for 16 hours and then eating for the 8 hours. Anyway, so you talked about the physiological fasting, and, that is kind of defined as when your body starts to get into ketosis. Let me ask you this: are people able to get into ketosis fast enough with the intermittent fasting, like within
Yeah.
that 16-hour time block, or really should you try to be aiming for longer than that?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of confusion and a lot of theories and a lot of bloggers and a lot of so-called experts in the field.
Mhm.
We follow science. We actually have done over 18 human trials
Nice.
and tens and tens of mice trials on fasting.
Hmm.
And we're the only fasting company in a sense because we sell fasting is the absence of products. So there are no companies in fasting. We're the
Sure.
only one because we sell nutrition.
That's
So
true.
so we had to put the science money behind the science. And we've been doing science on fasting for more than 2 decades, more than 20
Hmm.
years actually.
Wow. Wow.
Right. So we've studied every hour, every day, and so let me go back then give you a little bit of an overview so that people, understand it in a forest view and then in a tree view.
Hmm.
So in general, there are two types of fasting. There's intermittent fasting, anything below 2 days. And we're
Hmm.
gonna talk about that. And there's prolonged or periodic fasting, anything above 2 days of fast. And
Okay.
why 2 days? I mean, there's not like a clock, and whenever it's day two, you switch.
Sure.
For some people, it's day and a half. For others, 2.5. But
Mhm.
around day two is where, meaning when you fast, you have enough reserves in your body to compensate for the first couple of days.
Okay.
Okay. And you have three types of reserves in your body. I call them the checking accounts, the easy
Hmm.
to go to. It's the glycogen.
Hmm.
The savings account, which is fat.
Hmm.
You go and you tap into fat. And there's a credit. You can get a loan from the bank. That's the liver. Liver does neoglucogenesis
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and dumps extra calories into. So all these three are triggers for the first 2 days, and they can, every one of us has enough of those. I mean, not everyone, but most of us,
Hmm.
to go for up to a day or two and have enough compensation for the lack of calories.
Sure.
Now, after day two, the body tells the cells, well, wait a second, I'm not eating, I'm still fasting. I'm depleting very fast my reserves. We are in a crisis.
Hmm.
Therefore, I want to ask you to go and find sources of calories within the cell. So, are
Hmm.
there debris organelles that you can consume and instead of keeping them ineffectively just hanging around, consume those and try to get your performance optimized because I need you at your best to survive the fast.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
after 2 days, it means the body involves the cells into a
Mm.
fasting response. And what was a metabolic fast, a
Hmm.
weight-related intermittent fasting, is becoming a cellular fast and a
Ah.
cellular rejuvenation.
Hmm.
And that cellular rejuvenation is key. I mean, we call it autophagy scientifically, or
Hmm.
self-eat.
Sure.
And autophagy won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016.
Cool.
And so it's a very well evidenced scientific phenomenon that happens with
Hmm.
fasting. And it's very important because by then you're losing a lot of weight. And
Hmm.
so a lot of health conditions we suffer from, whether it's overweight, obesity, prediabetes, diabetes, they're all weight related.
Sure.
So by going beyond 2 days and further, you're losing a lot of weight, which you get all the metabolic benefits. But
Hmm.
now you're adding a cellular rejuvenation component, which is
Hmm.
more of a biological age reversal. So your cells, your
Hmm.
body, when you fast, every cell is impacted. Every cell lives on calories, right?
Sure.
So when fasting is so powerful and became so popular because it impacts everything: brain, heart, eyes, skin, everything is fasting when you fast, and everything gets into pushed into rejuvenation.
Mm.
And therefore you're having a total body, a little bit biological fixing, biological reversal of the cells.
Sure.
And that's very important for longevity because guess what? If you want to live longer, the best way to live longer is you being a younger you rather than an
Right.
older you, right?
Exactly.
And so this is the connectivity between fasting and longevity. You hear
Mm.
a lot of people tell
Mm.
them why you're fasting. They tell you, well, I don't have a lot of weight to lose, but I do it for longevity. And when
Mm.
they say that is because they are rejuvenating their body. Now, the misinformation is they're doing 16 hours of fast rather
Sure.
than doing a little bit more longer fast to involve the cells.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit something we need to clarify. I'll talk what happens on 15 hours and 16 hours, but
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of close the loop on why fasting is linked to longevity, because you lose weight and you
Hmm.
rejuvenate your cells, and that's the best thing you can do to your body. Is you at a younger you is further away from your, death or life
Sure.
threat.
Totally. That makes perfect sense. I appreciate you going into that. And I would love to know, what benefits, if there are, of doing those shorter intermittent fasts, 15 hours,
Yeah,
16 hours.
yeah. So we track people, hour by hour, and just to see at first when they get into ketosis, because you
Mhm.
asked me about that. And it seems, again, we're all different, right? Some people
Mhm.
don't get into ketosis up until, the first 20 or 24 hours. Why? Because they have enough reserves,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of glycogen in the body,
Mhm.
and their metabolic rate is low, and they're not exercising. So the demand on calories wasn't so high for them, and they have a lot of reserves
Sure.
versus a person who's very thin, very high metabolic rate, muscular, and not only does the 16 hours, but gets up in the morning, goes to the gym. That person is going to get into ketosis, much sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is just to give you two examples. But
Okay.
a lot of people you start seeing ketone bodies at hour 15 or 16. So by
Mhm.
that time, you're barely touching on ketosis.
Mhm.
But the biggest thing that I want to reveal today, the biggest scoop, is that most people, and overwhelmingly most people, will not go into autophagy at hour 16.
Sure.
So all this dissemination of doing intermittent fasting for autophagy, you
Mhm.
probably barely touch autophagy. I mean, autophagy happens every minute in the body. There's a cell rejuvenating somewhere, but I'm
Sure.
saying getting the entire cells into this push
Yeah.
towards autophagy
Mhm.
is not going to happen at hour 15 or 16. Why? Because we have enough reserves. I mean, you
Makes
you
sense.
slept you slept yesterday. You and I are talking this morning. If we haven't eaten, it's not the biggest crisis, and the body's going to tell the cells, "Sorry, I cannot feed you. There's no more fat. There's no more."
Right.
There's no crisis at hour 16 yet to
Sure.
engage the cells. If the crisis is starting, well, the body is sensing, "Hey, you didn't get breakfast.
Mhm.
It's already lunchtime, and I'm on guard, right? So I may
Mhm.
may start pushing, but there's no full push. The full push towards autophagy happens for most people again around day 2.
Okay. All right.
And
That makes.
so for those who are doing fasting for balancing their weight,
Mhm.
that's intermittent fasting is the way to go. And
Mhm.
especially if you don't binge eat after. So
Sure.
the science on the 16-hour fast is a little bit controversial. Why? It's definitely, can help people lose weight unless you binge eat.
Mhm.
And also some people cheat. They eat late at night, and then they go so many hours till 5 p.m. to eat. These
Mm.
guys these guys do not lose a lot of weight. They plateau right away because eating late at night is actually the worst thing you can do versus skipping breakfast. If you tell me, should I skip breakfast and eat late at night, or should I do breakfast and eat early at night? You should definitely eat early at night. Do your nightly
Interesting.
hour. Yeah, because when you eat late at night and you sleep,
Yeah.
right, the night hormones are growth hormones. So what you
Sure.
eat when you spike insulin when
Mhm.
eating carbs, and when you spike IGF, insulin like growth factor, when you eat proteins at night,
Yeah.
the body's saying, well, I'm going into anabolic state. Let me store the extras, right? And let me
Sure.
store the fat.
Sure.
So versus eating breakfast right before you go and walk and think, and you burn it right away. So it's
Yeah.
very important if you want to trade. Another secret today here, if you want to trade eating early at night and having breakfast versus eating late at night and not having breakfast.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And I think actually that may be something that ends up being more sustainable for people, because then the time where they've gone the longest without eating is when they're sleeping. And
Yeah,
and so then they're waking up and they're kind of eating
yeah,
first thing in the morning. You just get out of the habit of
yeah.
eating your meals later in the evening, or stuff like that. I see that actually being a more sustainable solution for a lot of people than saying trying to hold off until like noon or 2 p.m. or something every day to eat.
Yeah, and the social habits are pushing us towards
Mm,
eating late at night, right? We
sure.
leave work late now. You have still, some work to do at home.
Mm,
Then either you want to go out or you want to stay home and watch a movie, and then you
mm,
snack on a popcorn or the late thing from the. So
right.
social habits and the fact that work and life demands are pushing us towards late night creatures is
Mm-hmm.
actually is actually one of the force behind obesity
Mm,
globally. Versus when you study centenarians, people living 100 and beyond,
mm-hmm.
most of them, what they have in common are two very important factors.
Mm-hmm.
One is they're happy people, and
Mm,
they live in their nest, they live next to their families,
mm-hmm.
they have a positive approach to life, they don't stress a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
the second thing, they eat early and they sleep early. And
Yeah.
that's very important, because every night is when your growth hormones and when your anabolic push happens. If it
Mm-hmm.
happens on low calories, then you're not going to stack a lot of food, a lot
Sure.
of fat, transforming food to fat, versus the next day where you eat and then you burn it. And there are two studies published, one of them in the Journal of American College of Cardiology, showing that skipping breakfast might increase cardiovascular risk. And again,
Mm-hmm.
this is not to
Mm.
say that intermittent fasting would do that. No,
Sure.
what I'm saying is that people who skip breakfast typically, if they do it on purpose as intermittent fasters, that's great. If
Right.
Because then they have to eat also early to spend 16 hours. So that's great.
Sure.
But people that by default they tell you I skip breakfast, if you ask them deeply, they actually eat late at night, and
Ah,
and
yeah.
and they have reflux before sleeping. They don't sleep well. They wake up in the morning. They don't even have the appetite for food. They tell, oh, I don't
Sure.
have appetite for food in the morning.
Yeah.
This is because you just ate, a few hours ago, and you
Right.
didn't sleep well, and you have sleep apnea and reflux, and you're
Sure.
not eating in the morning. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a sign of not being that healthy potentially. What you
Ah,
want them to do is to eat early at night and then stick all the way to the morning. And if you want to push it to lose more weight, you do on purpose intermittent fasting. You skip
sure.
your breakfast and you go for 16 hours. But that's a healthy way of doing it
Yeah.
versus eating late at night and starving your body during the day just to practice it.
I love it. So there are clearly health benefits to doing some level of fasting, whether it's the 15, 16 hours and you're able to start to tap into ketosis maybe a little bit, or going a
Oh, for
little
sure.
bit, longer into the 2 days or beyond. But my question is there anybody that you would recommend not doing fasting? Or is
Yeah,
it kind of like across the board, like this would be good
yeah.
for people?
Yeah, no, just to finish the first statement, yes, there's definitely a lot of benefits to fasting, and it has to be the right fast, what we're trying to say, not the wrong fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the right fast is fasting overnight, the
Mm,
circadian fasting, 12 to 14 hours.
mm-hmm.
If you want to prolong that, prolong it to 16, but make sure you ate early, so you prolong it all the way to lunch rather than
Sure.
eating late at night and staying starving all the way to late, because the studies are showing this is not the right intermittent fasting. It's a good intermittent fasting, and there's a little bit of cheating on intermittent fasting.
Sure.
Now, going back to your question, you were asking if
If there's
uh,
anyone that shouldn't be fasting.
yeah, so again, when you say shouldn't be fasting, is how many hours? So circadian fasting, 12 hours, is not even fasting. It's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's our diet. It's
Mm-hmm.
humans. What we live today is a fad. We eat all the time, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not how we were built. This is why we're getting obese and we're developing diabetes and cancer and Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease. We as humans lived on planet Earth for hundreds of thousands of years.
Mm,
And we were always sleeping when the sun was down. There was no electricity, there was no refrigerator, there was no TV. And
mm,
we were waking up the next day, and the next day we were either seeking food or we had some leftovers to start the day with. So
mm.
that circadian rhythm fasting, the 12 hours, is critical. And we call it fasting today because we eat all the time and now that became fasting, but that should
Sure.
be part of everyone's diet. There's nothing showing that if you eat at 7 p.m., you sleep, you wake up in the morning, something
Mhm.
bad's going to happen. Actually, probably this is one of the pro longevity, pro healthy aging intervention that every one
Sure.
of us should do.
Yeah.
So, so now if you go further is when you say, okay, now we're stressing the body longer, and who should not do that?
Mhm.
Typically is if you're very frail. I mean, if you already have a very low BMI below 18, and you don't have reserves to compensate for extra long hours of fast, or if you need to grow. So
Okay.
you need to grow means you're a kid that needs to grow, or your mother with you're pregnant and you need
Gotcha.
to grow a baby and
Sure.
or lactate afterwards. So
Yeah.
if you need to grow, you need to eat a little bit more frequently rather than starve.
Mhm.
And this is if you're frail, or if you're growing a baby inside of you, and or if you're lactating. And
Mhm.
obviously, if you're too old and you have malabsorption and you're frail, and you're 92-year old but also frail and have some absorption of food disorder, you don't want to go and starve that person
Right.
further.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So then how would you recommend that people start in fasting? Like, is it just cold turkey? Like, I'm just not going to eat? Or is there kind of a transition way? How would you recommend somebody starting off?
Yeah, and again, I'm giving general answers, but
Mhm.
there's nothing is general when it comes
So
to an
true.
intervention. So
Yeah.
just to make sure we disclaim that. So I'm not
Sure.
going to generalize for everyone. I think the best way is to really start with the 12 hours, 12 to 14 hours, because
Mhm.
that's actually you're going to find it fast, that is feasible,
Mhm.
easy to do, and is going to change your perspective on a lot of things. You're going to sleep better because now you're not sleeping while digesting the last minute and having reflux. You're going to feel more energy the next day. You're going to feel getting leaner, but in a healthy way, not in a frayed way. So it's a healthy way to enter into it.
Mhm.
And now, if you want to lose extra weight and or have health conditions, sometimes also prolonged fasting helps with health conditions.
Sure.
Say you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, or
Mhm.
you're fasting for. There are studies on intermittent fasting with actually breast cancer as well, because you want to underfeed cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back, you asked me who should not fast. Well, what if you're growing? I told you anything that grows. What if it's cancer growing? Then you want to fast cancer
Sure.
because you
Yeah.
want to starve cancer. And there's a lot of studies on fasting with cancer,
Mm.
including ours as well with the
Mhm.
fasting mimic nutrition. But going back to your question, in general, is you can extend it to 16 hours or 18 hours in the short term if you want to lose weight and you want to accelerate there. Again, doing it not by eating late at night and starving all the way to 5, is
Mhm.
by doing it by eating at 6, 7, and then getting your lunch around noonish or 2 p.m.
Awesome. I
So
love
you
it.
train yourself into it, and then everyone has a different life routine,
Mhm.
different body composition. Some people will find it difficult, some people find it super easy, some people find it even natural way for them to match. But we definitely recommend starting by the 12 hours. That's actually just rematching your body with how you should live, and you can extend from there if you need to.
I love it. I think that's super straightforward, great advice. And like you're saying, it just kind of gives our body that reset of like, okay, here's the starting place that, our bodies are designed to be at with just kind of overnight fasting or circadian fasting, like
Yeah,
you're saying. So that makes
a
total
lot
sense.
of and some fasters actually they're I don't know if you've experienced the fast bar. Many fasters are now saying, well, I want to I want to balance the fact that I want to stay in fasting for 16 to 18 hours,
Mhm.
but I don't want to starve my body this long. What
Mm.
should I do? And there's only one bar solution for intermittent fasting with a patent called the fast bar.
Okay.
Basically, you eat it in the morning, and there's a randomized clinical trial showing that it's like water fast. You don't increase blood sugars, and you
That's
stay you
crazy.
stay in ketosis. That's a fasting mimicking nutrition.
That's so cool.
There are over 300 patents filed on the fasting mimicking nutrition because
Wow.
such a disruption that was brought to nutrition. It's amazing that you can eat, but
Yeah.
then your body doesn't know you're doing it. So
Huh.
There are a lot of intermittent fasters in the morning that find it a little bit difficult, or they get a little bit weakened.
Yeah.
They do the fast bar. It gives you all the calories you need for the morning. It
Uh-huh.
nourishes the brain, the heart, all the essentials organs that require in the morning some
Sure.
nutrients. But actually, it keeps you in ketosis and
That's
keeps your
so
blood
cool.
sugar flat. Yeah.
So, all right. So, this is spurring a whole new line of questions, but for the sake of brevity, I mean, just is there a reason why somebody wouldn't like only eat those bars? Like he's saying, okay, well, I'm eating, so I'm getting, feeling satiated and stuff, but now I'm just fasting for a week
Yeah.
or a month or 3 months
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, most of the new trials on fasting, they involve the fasting mimicking nutrition because it's
Mm,
becoming almost like why you want to starve while
sure.
fasting.
Yeah.
Now that you can do molecular fasting with the
Mhm.
nutrition. So we don't want to come and push everyone to consume like one bar, but
Yeah.
you're asking the right question. Why you want to starve? Because again, prolonged fasting always has more benefits,
Mhm.
but comes at more cost.
Sure.
More benefits because you're engaging your cells, you're correcting, you're losing more weight, but you're starving your brain, you're starving your heart, you're starving your
Yeah.
kidneys. So to balance that, this is why the National Institute of Health funded that research,
Mhm.
is how can I make fasting more compliant, healthier, and easier for people? And yes, I do the fast bar in the morning for
Mhm.
my fasting. And a lot of studies are showing that you should have something in the morning because this is when
Mhm.
you're active, this is when you're walking, when you're thinking, when you're
Sure.
working. And
Yeah.
if you're a mom, you're taking care of the kids, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of activities in the morning for a working mom or an at-home mom, and for a working father or at-home father in
Mhm.
both cases, or an athlete who
Sure.
likes to go, or I like to go to the gym in the morning.
Yeah.
You don't want to go starved, you want to go nourished. Now, a lot of
Mhm.
people tell you, I don't want to eat in the morning, but again, they're eating late at night. So let
Mhm.
them eat earlier at night
Yeah.
and get some nourishment in the morning. This is what the studies and the science are showing to be the best option.
I got you. That's awesome. Well, I tell you what, that bar sounds so incredibly useful. From kind of December of 2021 until the end of February 2022, I did 6 rounds. Yeah, 6 rounds of 3 day fasts.
Yeah,
Where I do 3 days on, 11 day. 3 days of not eating,
yeah,
11 day refeed, 3 days, and that was so incredibly depleting. I mean, I would lose 7 to 9 pounds over
yeah,
that, and I don't have like a ton of weight that I feel like I want to lose or that I can lose,
yeah.
over that 3 days. And it would take me, the entire 11 days just to start to kind of get back to where I was baseline. Tell you what, by the end of those 6 rounds of 3 day fast, I was, I mean, it did wonders for my body. Like I did it to try to help regulate my thyroid better. And it absolutely helped with that, but it was really depleting. So to
Yeah.
be able to have that resource of those bars and the fasting mimicking line of foods, like that would have been so helpful.
Yeah, and this is why we exist. We were a water fasting company, so
Mm,
we started the research of fasting in USC, and our founder, Professor Walter Longo.
mm.
I don't know if you read his book, The Longevity Diet, but it
No,
was
I
an
haven't.
Amazon bestseller. So most of the science of fasting comes from Professor Walter Longo, who's the head of the Longevity Institute at USC,
Awesome.
University of Southern California, and 90% of the articles on fasting, you will see his name there. And
Cool.
we all started with water fast. We were water fasting, but it wasn't possible nor healthy to tell people just go several days on water fast.
Sure.
I mean, it's much better than continuing to eating normal or to eating abnormal lifestyle when you're sick. So,
Mhm.
so I hear and I understand many doctors that would tell you, hey, go on water fast for a few days because it's good for your diabetes, or for better than eating high carb, maybe, but it's
Sure.
not
Right.
ideal. The ideal way is, again, when all the scientists got together and say, why don't we develop a fasting mimicking nutrition
Mm,
that nourishes the body but keeps the cells in a fasting stress, so you get the benefits and you don't get the side effects. So you said
yeah.
you were doing 3 days of fast.
Mhm.
If you want to go beyond the 16 hours where the fast bar can help you,
Mm.
there's the prolonged reset, something called prolonged, which is a 1 day fast. It's you
Okay.
eat food for 1 day and you can do 2 days or 3 days.
Mhm.
This is actually one of the most popular product in fasting is the prolonged reset.
Oh, cool.
And it's a 1 day, you get the box and you can do 1 day of fast or two or three.
Mhm.
It's very popular because a lot of people like to balance the week with 1 day of fast or 2 days of fast.
Yeah.
We call it the 6-1 or the 5-2, meaning
Gotcha.
6 days. 6 days you eat, 1 day you fast, or 5-2
Mhm.
is 2. And you have your food for the day. It's a small box. It has all the soups and the bars and the drinks that you need. And your
Mhm.
body doesn't know you're eating, so you stay in a fasting mode.
Awesome.
But you're nourishing your body at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. So, Dr. Antoun, where can people learn more about you, your work, El Nutra, the fasting mimicking diet foods, and yeah, where can people connect?
Yeah, we're very active on social. So if you go on social for Prolon, Facebook, Instagram, and all the platforms and Twitter, I'm under Dr. Joseph Anton,
Awesome.
Twitter, Instagram, but mainly LinkedIn for me. Joseph Anton on LinkedIn is
Love
what
it.
I'm the most active. But if you want to read about all this science, and there's over now 18 articles published, the science of fasting mimicking nutrition, how it can help you, whether you're healthy for your longevity, and if you're looking to optimize your nutrition around the health condition, you
Mhm.
can go to our corporate website, L-Nutra, which
Mhm.
stands for Longevity Through Nutrition, and you can read about our mission, vision, and our donations. Our founder, Professor Longo,
Mhm.
donates all his shares in the company to the Create Cures Foundation and other foundations. So we're a big. We have almost half of the company is pre-donated
Wow.
actually out there. This is why the Science Foundation is literally as a public good to put the
Mhm.
science of fasting out there to help people do fasting in a better way and donate it
So cool.
back to
That's awesome.
society. So,
Very cool. Very cool. Dr. Anton, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise with us. The question that we like wrapping up with for all of our guests is what is your definition of health?
for me, and this is a big question, right? And it was a big question in the 90s for the WHO, the World Health Organization, because it was defined as physical health. Then we added mental health, but how you measure any of those. And
Sure.
to me personally, after a long career. I started in medicine and then a PhD and then health
Mhm.
policy and public health. After my entire career, to me today, definition of health is your biological age. Because in the past, we used to die a lot from accidents, from infections, from acute diseases. Today, we die, 90% of us in the US will die from one of four diseases: cardiovascular, cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. All these four diseases, they happen at later stage in life. Even if you have the ApoE gene, you're not gonna have Alzheimer's at age 22. Even if you have, high cholesterol in the family, you're not gonna die at age 23 from a heart attack. So age remains. There's accelerators, of course, and there's decelerators, including lifestyle, including genetics, including the environment, including everything. How far you live from a hospital, from a doctor. There's a lot of factors that can accelerate or decelerate, but aging remains, and your age, your inner age, remains the most important predictor of whether you're going to have. If you tell me, hey, would you bet $1 million that me, Charlie, at age 40 today will have Alzheimer's or not? I'll bet $1 million that you don't have Alzheimer's. And I'll bet $1 million that tomorrow you're not going to have a heart attack. But if you tell me, hey, I'm 83, would you bet on that? I'll say, well, wait a second, I might not bet on it. So keeping people healthy from the inside, creating this delta between chronological age, which we cannot, play with. It's a clock,
Sure.
and biological age, how old are you from the inside,
Mhm.
for me is a unit measurement of health. So if governments
Mhm.
can standardize biological aging, there are many tests: Horvath, methDNA methylation. There's Morgan Levin has a great test for blood measurement and predicting aging score. But if we can standardize an aging test and
Mhm.
look at how old people are from the inside, I think that's the best correlate of how healthy you would be.
I love it, Dr. Anton. I mean, that is such a profound insight of, yeah, let's move past like what we're seeing on the outside. And, like you said, just kind of this chronological age and everything like that. And it sounds like, from what we've discussed today and the work that you're doing with El Nutra and, outside of there as well, that fasting in and of itself can certainly help to lower and kind of reset our biological age. So it sounds like that is absolutely something that will be extremely useful from a health
Yeah.
perspective.
I mean, this is how our ancestors lived. This is how humanity lived. Today, we
Mm-hmm.
live in a fad. We eat all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about fasting as if it's a new wave and could be a new fad or a new art. It's actually the most, for once, nutrition is coming back with something natural.
Sure.
We never had food all the time. We lived around rivers for hundreds of thousands of years and we migrated. So we had moments of when we slept early, we're doing intermittent fasting. When we migrated, we had longer period of fasting or during wars, etc. It's a cycle of life. I mean, as simple as if you watch a car race, when the car gets, the engine is overheated, the wheels are being torn. What do? You take a pit stop. And then the mechanics come and fix and track and fix and track. And this is exactly what prolonged fasting is. This is what our Prolon, the 5-day fasting nutrition does. It just puts you into a check and gets you back and track with the healthier, with a better performing, car that can last longer.
Sure.
And that's the goal, is to help you last healthy longer. This is how the health span concept that we're thriving towards.
I love it. Well, again, Dr. Antoun, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise with us. This is just a fascinating conversation, one that's applicable to so many people who are listening now. So yeah, thank you for everything that you shared with us today.
Thank you, Charlie. Have a good one.
You as well.
Wow, was that a fascinating conversation or what? I mean, there's research behind fasting as far as health and longevity. I mean, it's really solid. But as Dr. Antoun was saying, like how you go about doing it matters. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is trying to explore this idea of fasting, whether for extended period of time or intermittent fasting, but they're not really sure how to go about doing this? Share this episode with them so they can hear Dr. Antoun's expertise on this subject matter. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. So what did you think about that episode? Did you find the information useful? If you would like some more in-depth guidance on applying this kind of information to your own workouts, make sure to sign up for the upcoming One Workout Away Challenge. You can get registered by going to owa.matschaumburg.com. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.